Are we all ready to transition to our second segment? This one is called Work, the Future of Business and Where It Should Take Us. Our workspaces have definitely evolved over the years, especially the last few years. And here to talk about the future of work is our next speaker. Please welcome from Hong Kong, the Managing Director of Global Marketing and Communications at the Executive Center, Chelsea Perino.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here and to see so many diverse faces from so many different places across Asia and abroad. My name is Chelsea Perino. I'm Managing Director of Global Marketing and Communications at the Executive Center, which is Asia's largest flexible workspace provider with over 200 offices that span from Australia all the way over to the Middle East. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding why I'm here and why we're going to be talking about the future of work. But more closely, I actually would like to talk about the creative evolution of workspaces, because I think particularly over the last several years, we've really had to take a step back and try to unpack what work really means. So workspaces are, of course, where we are. It's a physical location. But I think what many people have recognized is that work is a lot more than that. So that's what we're going to dive into a little bit today. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you to do something unconventional, which is take out your phones, please, and scan this QR code, which will take you to Slido. You can also go to slido.com and fill in the polling number there at the bottom. And in one word, if you could describe the future of the workplace, just type it in there and let us know what it is. Just going to do a little temperature check here. I'm not going to reveal the results right now to keep you on your feet a little bit. We'll come back to that at the end. All right. So we're talking a lot about the future of work, right? It really feels like it's come front and center in the last couple of years particularly. But actually, the future of work is something that people have been speculating about for many, many decades. Take a look at this.
Now, this is where the family of the 21st century would relax. Over here is where work would be done. Now, this is where a man might spend most of his time in the home of the 21st century. This equipment here will allow him to carry on normal business activities without ever going to an office away from home. A telephone is this instrument here, a mock-up of a possible future telephone. This would be the mouthpiece. Now, if I want to see the people I'm talking with, I just turn the button and there they are. With equipment like this in the home of the future, we may not have to go to work. The work would come to us. In the 21st century, it may be that no home will be complete without a computerized communications console.
The domestication of the computer already has begun. In Phoenix, Arizona, the Charles Crawshaw family has learned to live with a computer terminal in their kitchen. This teletypewriter is connected by ordinary telephone lines to a computer complex in New York City, 2,400 miles away. Charles Crawshaw, a General Electric engineer, works on technical problems. His wife, Barbara, uses the computer for various household chores. Here, the computer has expanded the proportions of a recipe for 6 into a recipe for 14. By the 21st century, home computers may be as common as today's telephone.
So while not politically correct, you can see that, even in the 1960s, people were hypothesizing around what the future of work is going to look like. And while Walter Cronkite may have, given us a little bit of a hint into where we were going, he was 20 years too early. These are a couple of headlines from 2021. I'm assuming that many of you resonated with the computer console in the kitchen sort of experience. I know I did. But as you can see here, the world's biggest work from home experiment has been triggered by coronavirus. Working from home is here to stay even when the economy reopens, right? The irony is that when this work from home experiment began, we were completely unprepared. despite all of the technology that has been at our fingertips and all of the evolution that has taken place since that clip was filmed in 1967.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take
we're
a
trying
look.
to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
So raise your hand if any of you have had a funny, awful, unexpected, hilarious experience working from home. So there we go, right? This is a universal experience, and what we need to do is really now move past all of those uncomfortable sort of situations. And we have adapted, right? We all know how to use Zoom. We can have virtual conferences. We just had an amazing virtual presentation now, right? But I think in order to understand, where we're going, we need to take a look at where we've been, right? So if you think about the evolution of both workspaces, but also the sentiment around work and how it happens, you can start back in 1726 when the first office, Old Admiralty Office in London, was established, right? That's kind of the first documentation of an office. And that was kind of the instigation of bringing people out of the factories and into a more organized sort of workplace. But the sentiment behind what the workplace actually was for, its purpose, really remained the same. In 1909, Frederick Taylor invented the word scientific management, Taylorism, and it was all about the fact that the office was there to facilitate productivity through efficiency, right? So this idea that you go to the office, you're there to work, you do your best job, you deliver the most that you can in your respective role, and then you go home, right? So one could argue that while that environment did not foster creativity and collaboration, perhaps it did instill a little bit better work-life balance because you went in at 9 o'clock, you did your job for 8 hours, and then you went home, right? I don't know about you, but the 9-to-5 job hasn't existed for me for many, many years. Then as we move down this trajectory, we come into the traditional working model, which is kind of where a lot of us probably were before COVID, right? You have an office, you have working hours, maybe they're not as rigid as 9 to 5, but they're probably something like 8 to 6 or 10 to 7 or something along that line. And you probably went there every day, right? And maybe you had client meetings outside of your office, and maybe sometimes you took a call at home at night, but for the most part, for most people, before COVID, they were in an office the majority of the time. And then there was this little pocket of lucky people, right? The aspirational digital nomads that you always saw on Instagram, when social media kind of came into the fore. You said, man, they're working in Fiji off of their laptop on a beach with a pina colada. What a life. I wish I could do that. And then COVID-19 happened, and everybody had to go home. And for about 2 weeks, it was amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna work from my pajamas. I can get up at 9 o'clock and be on my call at 9 o'clock at the same time. Just have to make sure that I'm, appropriately dressed for my Zoom meetings. And then after about 4 weeks, everybody realized this is awful, right? Because not only are you working home, your spouse is working at home, your kids are at school at home, maybe your aunties and your grandmas and everybody else in your immediate family are also at home, and it started to become very difficult to feel productive and also to have the kinds of spaces that we need to do the kinds of work that we need to do on a daily basis, right? So then we moved out of work from home as we started to emerge from COVID at various stages throughout the world, right? And then this idea of work from anywhere kind of happened, right? Because there were a lot of people that said, wait a minute, actually, I don't want to go back to the office, but I also don't want to be at home. I'm going to go work from third spaces. And that's where this idea of, the third space kind of emerged. And now where we sort of are at present is this idea of hybrid working, right? Where there are a lot of different environments that you can choose from. The office is usually one of them. Home is usually another option. And then everything in between. But I don't think we're at a stage where we've defined exactly what hybrid means. So I think we need to think about, the direction that we're headed when it comes to workplace from two different perspectives. The first is, are you interested in working in a flexible kind of way? And two, are you empowered to do that, right? So this matrix is called the remote work willingness matrix, right? And we've seen a shift from the lower left quadrant, where workplace presence is a priority, which we just kind of talked about, over to the right-hand side, where we're really moving towards this idea or this aspiration that flexible working is an integrated and championed part of employment policy, right? So not only do you have the ability to work from home, you have the policy infrastructure to work from home, but your organizations are proactively encouraging you to make smart choices about what you do and what environments are going to empower you to do that the best. Then we have the empowerment matrix, right? And on the vertical axis, you can see organizational empowerment, and on the horizontal axis is personal empowerment, right? And again, if we start on the left-hand side in the lower left quadrant, we've got traditional workplaces models and works from home, right? In the traditional workplace, empowerment is pretty low. And this isn't always it isn't always the case, but you're already contained within a particular environment. So your ability to make choices about how you do your work best isn't there, or it's not as broad as it could be, right? And then on the upper right quadrant, we have this hybrid workspace model, right? Where organizations are really giving employees the tools and the training and the information, and managers the ability to make decisions about their teams in the most effective way for that particular unit, department, or individual, right? But we're seeing a reversal, which is quite interesting, right? I'm sure you've seen some of the headlines. Google expects all employees back into the office 5 days a week. Or CEO of JP Morgan says, no more work from home, it's over, right? So we're kind of moving backwards, where we're going from this hybrid workplace where we're really trying to empower people to make decisions about how they work best, to saying, look, we want you to make some decisions, but we also expect you to be in the office some of the time, right? And a lot of studies say that the average sentiment is that 2 to 3 days in the office or 2 to 3 days at home is what the majority of the population actually really wants, right? So the office is not dead. The office purpose is just changing, and that's really exciting. But we need to be making conscious decisions about what the office is used for and communicating to our teams about how they need to be conscious about the work that they're doing and the different kinds of spaces that they can utilize to do that. So I want to bring up this term workism, right? Because over the last couple of decades, we've really seen a shift away from that Taylor model where work is a 9 to 5 and you go there and you do your productivity things there, and then you leave and you forget about work, and then you do it again when you go back the next day. Workism is this idea that employment is not just for economic production, but it actually is a centerpiece of a person's identity, right? And it's not that that's a bad thing, but that can start to become consuming. And when something like COVID-19 happens and suddenly the workplace or work culture or work altogether totally disappears, it can be really unsettling. And there's a quote from a book called The Good Enough Job, which I recently read, by Simon Stolzoff. And he says, if workism is the religion, then dream jobs are the deities. And I think this is a really poignant sort of quotation, because it really postulates that, if you are intrinsically attached to what you do, then the workplace is going to be an important part of your life, right? And so during COVID, when suddenly that workplace wasn't there, people took a step back and said, wait a minute, what is this whole work thing, right? Do I need my job to be so attached and representative of who I am as a person? People started asking, why work? Why work at all, right? We all know the Great Resignation. Tons of people quit their jobs and said, I'm not coming back, even when the economy opened back up again. They're asking questions like, why do I work here, right? Why would I work here? And here could be the physical location, but here is also an organization, right? Why am I going to work for you? Why am I going to work in that company? And employers are trying to answer the question, why work for us? We need you to come here. We just mentioned that Google's requiring people to come back to the office. They built big, beautiful, amazing campuses because they wanted people to stay. And it's actually a bit of a trick, because if you go back to this idea that offices are supposed to deliver productivity, like Frederick Taylor said, Google created these campuses where people could get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They could bring their kids. They could go to the gym. They could get massages. Why? Because they wanted people to stay longer in the office, doing more work, being more creative, right? So it's an interesting juxtaposition to see where we're going, because people are saying, look, you can give me breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I still don't want to come back to the office. That's not enough, right? So we need to start thinking about what beyond just the physical infrastructure do we need to create in order to make workspace experience better for our employees. So what does the future look like? These are a couple of headlines from 2023. As you can see, some of the descriptions are less about the design and more about feelings, right? You've got cozy, you've got hybrid, green, social, flexible, right? So the way that people are thinking about the office and the way that we as organizations, designers, architects, business leaders should be thinking about work as an ecosystem is about experience. So let's cut to your results of the word cloud. Let's see what you think about the future of the workplace. Look at this. Hybrid, flexible, homey, inclusive, everywhere. See, so you guys are very representative of what some of the headlines are saying, and I think that's very, very clear. I mean, one of the key themes that I've heard over the day today and also yesterday in speaking with people in this room is the idea of human centricity, right? So a workplace isn't a place without the people. So at the end of the day, it's really about who are the people that are working, what are they doing, and what are the things that we can do to empower them to deliver their best work? Because I believe at the end of the day, that's what everybody tries to do. So I will leave you with a funny visual that I think kind of encompasses everything. So you may have heard the phrase, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, but over the last couple of years, that's sort of shifted. And this artist had a different take. He said, do what you love and you'll work super hard all the time with no separation or any boundaries, and also take everything extremely personally. So I think this is both a cautionary tale, but also a little bit of optimism, because I think if we approach things from a human-centric perspective, we can get back to that do what you love and you won't feel like you're working. Thank you so much. Would love to connect with everybody after this.